I'm David Weinberger. I'm a senior researcher at the Harvard Berkman Center for Internet and Society, and I co-direct the Harvard Library Innovation Lab. And I was here today to talk about my book, Too Big to Know. The aim of the talk was to look at some of the ways in which knowledge is taking on the properties of its new medium, which is the internet, as opposed to its old paper medium. It turns out a lot of what we think about knowledge, at least in the West, is based upon the limitations of its old medium of paper. So once knowledge is freed from paper and is put on the net, it begins to form networks where different properties emerge, rather than it being simply, knowledge being simply that about which we agree and all differences are settled. Networked knowledge contains differences and disagreements. Sometimes those are terrible and unhelpful, but sometimes they're really crucial to the knowledge itself, maintaining those differences and disagreements. We are able to form knowledge networks that let us not only explore and disagree but link together, but also enable us to ask questions that get answered in public. And that, I think, is the key part, that knowledge and learning itself is becoming a public activity from which everybody can benefit, not just you, the lucky person who happens to be getting an answer or getting educated. The idea that learning ought to be a public activity, I think, is a very powerful one on the web and very powerful for organizations as well. In addition, we're seeing a different idea of authority. Rather than authority going to the person with the sort of grayest hair and the most authoritative voice, or the backing of the biggest institution, we're seeing authority go to sources that are comfortable acknowledging their own fallibility, the fact that they may be wrong, their own uncertainty, which is to say their own humanity. And being able to talk in a human voice is becoming not a sign of weakness, but a sign of strength and well, authority in its own way. And finally, we are coming out of a time for about 2,500 years when it was assumed that to know something was to have it precisely defined in a very neat and careful way, and that's what knowledge consisted in. Now we're seeing tremendous benefit in letting knowledge get really messy. Lots of ideas, lots of links, lots of connections, lots of ways of taking things, lots of taxonomies, lots of orders, all simultaneous, rather than having to pick one and say, this is the right way of thinking about this thing. Messiness has problems, but messiness is also how you let meaning get very, very big. All these things, I think, have very direct organizational effects. And organizations that can embrace these, I think, can suddenly get much, much smarter. They can learn together and they can know together in linked knowledge networks where differences and disagreements add to the strength of the organization.